My name is Ruby Dawson. I'm 34 years old, and for almost 6 years, I lived with a man who could erase reality with a calm voice and a disappointed expression. That sounds dramatic when I say it out loud now. Back then, it felt normal. Or at least normal enough that I kept making excuses for it. Ethan Mercer was 36, handsome in that polished, trustworthy way that made strangers instantly comfortable around him. He worked in medical device sales, wore expensive jackets he pretended weren't expensive, and carried himself like a man who always knew more than everyone else in the room. We'd been together 9 years. Married 6. Living in Columbus, Ohio, inside a townhouse I'd bought 2 years before our wedding. I worked as a marketing analyst for a hospital network. My life ran on schedules, reports, timelines, and details. Ethan liked to joke that I organized life like a spreadsheet. Maybe I did. Maybe that's why what happened between us took me so long to recognize. At first, I honestly thought Ethan was forgetful. Everybody forgets things sometimes. But Ethan only forgot things that benefited him. That was the detail I missed in the beginning. He forgot promising to pay the HOA fee until we got a late notice. He forgot he'd agreed to pick me up after an outpatient procedure in Dublin, leaving me groggy and waiting outside the clinic for nearly an hour. He forgot saying yes to Christmas Eve dinner with my mother after I'd already confirmed it with her. He forgot telling me he was having drinks with clients instead of dinner alone with an old female friend, whose receipt later slipped from his coat pocket. Every conversation followed the same pattern. I'd bring something up carefully, calmly, and Ethan would lean back slightly, narrow his eyes with almost gentle confusion, and say, "I think you're remembering that wrong." That sentence changes you over time. Not all at once. Slowly. Like water wearing down stone. You stop arguing about what happened and start wondering whether your own brain can be trusted. I didn't even realize how much damage it was doing until one night I stood in our kitchen staring at the microwave clock because Ethan insisted we'd had an entirely different conversation than the one I remembered. And for a terrifying second, I believed him. That moment scared me more than any fight we'd ever had. The next morning, during my lunch break, I went to Target and bought a blue spiral notebook. Nothing fancy. Just cheap cardboard covers and lined paper. I told myself it was temporary, just until things settled down. I started writing down conversations. Date. Time. Exact wording. Where we were. Who heard it? Nothing emotional. Just facts. May 4th, Kitchen Island, 7:18 p.m. Ethan said he would pay the HOA fee Friday morning. June 12th, Garage, 8:02 a.m. Ethan agreed Charlotte could visit 4th of July weekend. July 3rd, text from Ethan at 6:11 p.m. Running late, but I booked the dog sitter. That notebook became my private lifeline. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I didn't tell Ethan about it at first. Then last fall, he found it while searching my work tote for a charger. I'll never forget the sound of those pages flipping. He stood beside my desk, reading silently for maybe 30 seconds before laughing. Not nervous laughter. Mocking laughter. "Wow," he said. "You really document me like I'm some criminal." I remember crossing my arms because suddenly I felt embarrassed instead of angry. I write things down because you keep telling me conversations never happened. He tossed the notebook onto the desk. Or maybe you need props for arguments. That should have been the moment I left. It wasn't. The actual breaking point came 2 Fridays ago. His older sister Lauren and her husband Ben came over for dinner. Nothing dramatic at first. Pasta. Wine. Background music low enough to hear the dishwasher humming in the kitchen. Lauren started talking about an August cabin trip their family wanted to plan. I casually said, "Ethan already told me we couldn't do that weekend because of my cousin's memorial in Seattle." Ethan looked up from his plate immediately. "I never said that." The room changed instantly. Ben stopped chewing. Lauren blinked twice. I actually laughed because I thought Ethan was joking. He wasn't. "Ruby," he said carefully, "you do this all the time. You hear one thing and build an entire story around it." That hot, cold feeling rushed through my chest so fast, I almost felt dizzy. "No," I said. "Last Sunday after brunch with Tyler, in your SUV, you said we needed August 16th through 18th open." Ethan set down his fork slowly, like he was the patient adult, handling someone irrational. "I said maybe part of August should stay flexible because work was busy. That's completely different." Then came the smile. Small.
Controlled. Superior.
"I think your memory fills in blanks sometimes." And suddenly, I was done. Not because it was the cruelest thing he'd ever said, because this time he said it in front of witnesses. I stood up quietly, walked to the desk near the hallway, opened the drawer, and grabbed the blue notebook. The second Ethan saw it, his face changed. "Don't start with that," he muttered. I ignored him. Opened directly to the page. Read aloud. Sunday, February 8th, 1:26 p.m. In Ethan's SUV after brunch with Tyler, Ethan said, "We need August 16th through 18th blocked for Ruby's cousin's memorial in Seattle. I'll handle flights this week." Silence. Lauren slowly lowered her wine glass. Ben stared directly at Ethan. Ethan leaned back and laughed once. "If you wrote it down, you twisted it." That sentence made me completely calm. I don't know why. Maybe because hearing it out loud finally exposed how absurd everything had become. "Good thing I kept the notebook," I said. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the shared calendar photo I'd saved weeks earlier. There it was. Seattle Memorial. Entered in blue, under Ethan's initials. Lauren frowned immediately. "Wait," she said softly. "I remember Ethan telling Mom you guys couldn't do the cabin because of Ruby's family trip." Ben muttered under his breath. Man. Ethan looked around the table, like betrayal had somehow happened to him. I looked at my husband and realized I was exhausted. Exhausted from defending reality. Exhausted from cross-examining my own memory every single day. "Pack an overnight bag," I said quietly. He blinked. "What?" "You're not staying here tonight." "You're kicking me out over a misunderstanding?" "No," I said. "Over a pattern." Lauren and Ben left awkwardly 20 minutes later. At the front door, Lauren hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm sorry." Ethan followed me room to room after they left.
Accusing. Pacing.
Telling me I was humiliating him. Calling me obsessive. Saying I turned normal marriage problems into courtroom drama. Every single time he stopped talking, I repeated the same sentence. "You need to leave." By 11:14 p.m., he finally walked out carrying a duffel bag. From the driveway, he texted me, "This is insane. We are not ending our marriage because you're dramatic." I changed the garage code before midnight. Then I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the blue notebook beside me. The house was completely silent, and the first thing I felt was relief. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney named Dana Whitmore before I could talk myself out of it. I almost canceled twice while driving to her office. Part of me still felt ridiculous. Like, maybe I was overreacting. Maybe every marriage had confusion like this. Maybe I really was too sensitive. That's the terrifying thing about long-term gaslighting. Even when you finally escape the room, their voice keeps echoing in your head. Dana's office sat on the third floor of an old brick building downtown. Warm lighting, quiet hallway, a fake ficus tree in the corner that somehow made the room feel safer. I brought everything. The blue notebook, screenshots, late fee notices, calendar photos, emails. 3 years of slowly collected proof that I wasn't crazy. Dana spent almost 20 minutes silently flipping through the notebook. No interruptions. No skepticism. Just page after page after page. Finally, she looked up at me and said, "This is the most organized gaslighting documentation I've ever seen." I almost cried right there. Not because the words were dramatic, because she believed me instantly. No hesitation. No, are you sure? No, maybe it was miscommunication. Just belief. I hadn't realized how starved I was for that. The legal side turned out surprisingly simple. The townhouse was mine before marriage. Clean premarital ownership. The joint checking account held a little over $11,000. Ethan's truck was his. My retirement stayed mine. Dana warned me about one thing, though. "Do not get emotional and sloppy now," she said. "Get precise." So I did. I moved my direct deposit into a separate account, downloaded years of financial statements, backed up text messages, changed passwords, photographed every room in the townhouse, adjusted smart lock settings, documented everything. And every night after work, I'd sit quietly in my kitchen with the notebook nearby like some strange little guardian. The relief kept growing. That surprised me most. I thought I'd feel devastated. Instead, I felt lighter every day he wasn't inside the house rewriting conversations. Ethan, meanwhile, immediately launched a campaign to control the story. By day 2, his mother Denise called me. Her voice carried that careful softness people use when they've already decided you're unstable. "Ruby," she sighed, "marriage is bigger than scorekeeping." I stared out the kitchen window while she talked. "This isn't scorekeeping," I said. "It's documentation." Long silence. Then quietly, "Ethan thinks stress may be affecting how you remember things lately." I almost laughed. Of course that was the angle. Of course. I told her I could send specific notebook entries where Ethan promised things, denied them later, then changed his story once evidence appeared. Denise immediately went quiet. Finally, she said, "I don't think that would be helpful." Exactly. Because evidence destroys manipulation. The unexpected shift came from Lauren. 3 days later, she showed up carrying coffee and a white bakery box filled with cinnamon rolls. She looked nervous, standing on my porch. "I just wanted to check on you." We sat at the kitchen island for almost 2 hours while I showed her parts of the notebook. Not every page. Just enough. The outpatient clinic ride. Holiday plans. The contractor deposit Ethan swore he never approved. The dog sitter. Halfway through reading, Lauren covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God," she whispered. Then she looked at me differently. Not politely. Not sympathetically. Like someone finally recognizing a pattern they'd ignored for years. "He used to do this when we were kids." That sentence chilled me. Apparently, Ethan had been rewriting reality since middle school. Borrow money, deny it later. Promise chores, then swear nobody told him. Convince their parents Lauren had agreed to things she never said. Small lies. Petty lies. Constant lies. Not dramatic enough to expose immediately. Just enough to make other people doubt themselves. Lauren looked genuinely sick by the time she left. Dana officially filed the divorce petition Friday morning. Communication restrictions went out immediately. Property matters only, email only, everything documented. Ethan hated that. The emails started arriving in waves. You're humiliating both of us. We can solve this privately if you stop escalating. Lauren always hated me, and now she's poisoning you. I'm willing to do counseling, but the notebook has to go. That last line made my stomach twist. The notebook has to go. Not, I want us healed. Not, I understand your pain. Evidence had to disappear. That told me everything. Then the outside pressure started. His cousin Aubrey messaged me saying marriage required grace, not spreadsheets. A woman from Ethan's office emailed asking if I'd reconsider for everyone involved. Ben's mother actually left me a voicemail explaining men forgot conversations all the time, and women sometimes held on to details too tightly. I forwarded every message directly to Dana. Her response made me laugh for the first time in weeks. These people are being surprisingly useful. Sunday evening, Ethan showed up at the townhouse without warning. The doorbell camera notification appeared on my phone while I was folding laundry upstairs. When I opened the app, there he was, holding our framed wedding photo in one hand, a paper bag in the other. Lemon cookies from the bakery near our old apartment. For one terrible second, seeing him standing there almost cracked me open emotionally. Not because I wanted him back. Because memory is complicated. You can miss pieces of someone while still knowing they hurt you. Ethan looked directly into the camera. Ruby, I know you're home. I stayed upstairs. He kept talking. Said he missed me. Said he understood now that I'd felt unheard. Said he wanted one conversation without theatrics. Then he held up the wedding photo like it was supposed to erase years of manipulation. I pressed the speaker button. Leave the frame on the porch and go. He flinched. Ruby, come on. Leave it and go. That's when the mask slipped. Suddenly I was cold.
Cruel.
Manipulated by Lauren. No normal person destroys a marriage because her husband mixed up a few conversations. I stared at him through the phone screen and finally said the sentence I should have said years earlier. You didn't mix them up. You erased them. His jaw tightened instantly. For a moment, I saw pure anger underneath the performance. He stayed another minute before setting the frame down too hard against the porch railing and walking away. Dana used the footage to support exclusive occupancy during proceedings. Because the townhouse was premarital property and Ethan was already staying with his parents, the judge approved it quickly. No surprise visits. No unannounced access. Funny how clearly Ethan suddenly understood boundaries once a judge enforced them. Life inside the house slowly became peaceful again. I bought new sheets. Moved our wedding photo into the hallway closet. Started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. At work, I finished an entire quarterly dashboard ahead of schedule, and my director casually mentioned I seemed sharper lately. That comment stayed with me all day.
Sharper. Steadier.
Turns out, clarity comes back fast when nobody's standing in your kitchen rewriting reality every evening. But Ethan wasn't calming down. He was changing tactics. And somehow, that felt even more dangerous. 3 weeks into the separation, Ethan stopped sounding angry. He started sounding concerned. That terrified me more. Anger is obvious. Concern can hide almost anything. The wellness check happened on a Tuesday morning at 7:40. I was standing barefoot in my kitchen making coffee when somebody knocked firmly on the front door. Not impatient.
Official.
When I opened it, A Columbus police officer stood on the porch, looking mildly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we received a report expressing concern about your well-being." I remember blinking twice because, for one strange second, I honestly thought somebody had died. Then he continued. "The caller reported I was isolating myself, behaving erratically, and obsessively documenting people." I actually closed my eyes for a moment. Of course. Of course Ethan had done this. The officer was polite about it, embarrassed even. I explained I was in active divorce proceedings involving harassment concerns and gave him Dana's business card. He looked relieved. After about 4 minutes, he apologized for disturbing me and left. I locked the door, leaned against it, and laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because the manipulation had become so predictable, it almost felt mechanical. Dana sent Ethan's attorney a formal warning letter that same night, documenting misuse of police resources as harassment. The next morning, Ethan emailed me, pretending he knew nothing about it. "I hope you're taking care of your mental health during all this." I forwarded that email too. Then he took the performance public. One Friday evening, he posted a long, vague paragraph on Facebook about loving someone through difficult episodes and the pain of watching private struggles become public weapons. No names. No direct accusations. Just enough implication for people to start whispering. Within hours, mutual acquaintances started messaging me. One woman from our old neighborhood texted, "Praying for your healing." I stared at the message for nearly a minute before replying with a screenshot of Ethan's shared calendar entry for the Seattle Memorial. Underneath it, I typed, "I'm fine. He's lying." That became my new approach. No emotional essays. No defending myself endlessly. One screenshot.
Conversation over.
And slowly, people started noticing the pattern. Then came the watch incident. Ethan emailed claiming I'd hidden a gold Tag Heuer watch his grandfather gave him years earlier. The watch was sitting exactly where he'd left it. Top drawer, guest bedroom dresser, wrapped in an old sock. Dana told me not to argue. So I photographed the watch beside that day's newspaper, sealed it in padded packaging, and mailed it directly to his attorney. Total shipping cost, $18.75. Ethan emailed later claiming he didn't realize it was there. Of course he didn't. Lauren called me laughing so hard she had to stop twice to breathe. Apparently, their father had finally confronted Ethan after reading some of the legal emails. He asked him one question. "If Ruby's memory is so unreliable, why does your story keep changing?" Best sentence of the entire month. The strange thing was, while Ethan became more unstable, my own life started feeling normal again. My friend Elise finally got tired of me hiding inside work and divorce paperwork and dragged me to Wednesday trivia night at a brewery in Grandview. I almost canceled. Twice. But she refused to let me stay home. That's where I met Miles Bennett. 35. Middle school history teacher. Dry humor. Kind eyes. The type of man who listened fully before answering. At first, he was just the guy on the neighboring trivia team who kept accidentally making me laugh. Then he bought me coffee after the game. Then another coffee the next week. Then a walk along the Scioto Mile downtown while the city lights reflected across the water. And the entire time, nobody told me I remembered things incorrectly. That sounds dramatic. But when you spend years being quietly trained to distrust yourself, simple emotional safety feels almost unreal. Miles remembered details. Small ones. The name of my director at work. How I took my coffee. The fact I hated cilantro. Nothing performative. Nothing overwhelming. Just attentiveness. I kept waiting for hidden manipulation underneath the kindness. It never came. Meanwhile, Ethan somehow found out about him. I still don't know how. Maybe social media. Maybe mutual friends. Maybe he was watching more closely than I realized. Whatever the reason, he showed up at my office the following Monday. Reception called upstairs around noon. "Your husband is here," the receptionist said carefully. "He says he has something sentimental for you." My stomach dropped instantly. I went downstairs because I refused to let hospital staff become supporting characters in my divorce. Ethan stood in the lobby, holding our honeymoon photo album from Sedona. He looked exhausted in a very deliberate way, like somebody styling themselves as tragic. "I thought maybe you'd want to remember us before everybody got in your head." That sentence snapped something inside me, because that was always his strategy. Your thoughts aren't yours. Your feelings aren't yours. Your memory isn't yours. Someone else poisoned you. Someone else changed you. Never him. I looked directly at him and said quietly, "That's the problem, Ethan. I do remember us." His face changed instantly. Not sadness.
Possession.
Is there someone else? There it was. Not grief over losing me. Fear of losing ownership. "You need to leave," I said. He stepped closer. "You're seriously throwing away 9 years because I forgot things sometimes?" "You didn't forget," I said. "You edited." His hand brushed my elbow lightly. Not aggressive. Didn't matter. Security was already approaching from the hallway. The receptionist must have called them the second she saw tension building. Ethan kept talking while they escorted him toward the exit. About loyalty. About marriage. About misunderstanding. About how I used to know who he really was. The entire performance sounded exhausted by then. Like even he was struggling to hold the story together. Dana filed for a civil protection order the next morning. Repeated unwanted appearances. Harassment through third parties. The wellness check. The workplace confrontation. The public insinuations about my mental health. Ethan's attorney tried framing him as emotional rather than threatening. Dana answered with one sentence that made me want to hug her. Repeated unwanted contact does not become less invasive simply because it arrives disguised as concern. The hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. And weirdly, I felt calm. Not because court sounded pleasant, because paperwork had become oxygen to me. Facts. Dates.
Records. Reality.
After years of living beside someone who bent truth until it barely resembled itself, documentation felt safer than emotion. The night before court, I sat alone in the townhouse with Penny asleep beside my feet. Yes, I'd adopted a rescue dog 2 days earlier. One white paw. No understanding of personal space. Emotionally honest in a way Ethan never managed to be. I looked at the blue notebook sitting on the bookshelf and realized something painful. The notebook never destroyed my marriage. It just stopped Ethan from controlling the story by himself anymore. And deep down, that was the part he could never forgive. Court was yesterday. And for the first time in years, Ethan Mercer walked into a room where charm could not compete with documentation. Dana arrived carrying 3 organized binders and the blue spiral notebook. That notebook looked strangely small sitting on the polished courtroom table. Cheap cardboard cover. Bent corners.
Ordinary.
But inside, it lived 3 years of my life.
Bills. Appointments.
Promises. Denials. Tiny moments that individually sounded harmless, but together formed a pattern impossible to ignore. Ethan arrived wearing a charcoal gray suit I'd bought him 2 Christmases earlier. Perfect tie. Perfect hair. Perfect wounded expression. The version of him strangers trusted instantly. For years, that version made me question myself constantly. Not anymore. His attorney opened softly. My client was emotional. My client struggled with communication. My client wanted reconciliation. Dana didn't interrupt once. She simply stood when it was her turn and said, "Reconciliation does not explain false wellness reports, repeated unwanted appearances, workplace confrontations, or a documented pattern of denying prior statements until evidence appears." Then she handed the judge the notebook. That little blue notebook mattered for one reason. It was boring.
Consistent. Routine.
You can fake dramatic stories. It's harder to fake ordinary life repeatedly over several years. The judge spent a long time flipping through entries silently. At one point, the courtroom became so quiet I could hear paper turning. Then came the Seattle memorial issue. The judge asked Ethan directly whether he entered the memorial reminder into the shared calendar. Ethan shifted slightly. "I don't specifically recall creating that entry myself." The judge held up the printed screenshot showing Ethan's initials attached to the event. "It appears your devices recall it just fine." I looked down immediately so nobody would see my expression. Across the room, Dana actually wrote something down to hide a smile. Then the hearing shifted, and Ethan slowly started losing control of the narrative. Dana walked through everything carefully. The notebook entries, the porch visit, the lemon cookies, the demand that the notebook be destroyed, the workplace appearance, the wellness check, the vague social media campaign implying I was mentally unstable. Every individual event sounded manageable alone. That's what Ethan had always relied on.
Isolation. Fragmentation. Confusion.
But together, the pattern became impossible to miss. Ethan tried explaining every incident separately, like separating them would somehow erase the larger picture. The wellness check came from concern. The office visit came from love. The Facebook posts were misunderstood. The notebook felt hostile. Everything had an explanation. That was always his gift. Not truth.
Explanations.
But explanations collapse once somebody finally sees the whole pattern at once. Then the judge asked the question that changed the room entirely. If you sincerely believed your wife was mentally unstable, why did you continue repeatedly contacting her directly, instead of communicating through attorneys or medical professionals? Ethan opened his mouth, paused, then quietly said, "Love makes people persistent." The judge answered immediately. Persistence is not permission.
Silence.
Absolute silence. Dana then presented the security report from my workplace, copies of Ethan's emails demanding the notebook disappear, and documentation of indirect harassment through relatives and acquaintances. Ethan's attorney attempted one last argument, that Ethan simply loved me deeply and struggled emotionally with the divorce. Dana replied calmly, "Love does not require another person to distrust their own memory in order to survive." I don't think I'll ever forget that sentence, because it explained my marriage better than anything else ever had. The protection order was granted for 1 year. No direct contact. No workplace appearances. No visits to the townhouse. All divorce communication through attorneys only. Property retrieval supervised and scheduled.
Final.
Clean.
Official.
Reality. Finally written somewhere, Ethan couldn't rewrite it. The divorce itself finalized surprisingly fast after that. People always ask about the settlement, so here it is. Ethan kept his truck, bonus account, golf clubs, and the gold watch that apparently completed an emotional journey through certified mail. He received half the joint checking after reimbursements. totaling a little over $5,000. I kept the townhouse entirely because it was premarital property, documented down to the original closing statement. My retirement stayed mine. His stayed his. Dana negotiated furniture division that mostly resulted in Ethan taking the giant sectional couch, a smoker grill, and 2 lamps his mother forced on us during our 2nd year of marriage. My legal fees totaled just under $8,000.
Expensive.
Still dramatically cheaper than spending another decade apologizing for my own memory. The aftermath surprised me most. Lauren and I actually became closer after the divorce than we'd ever been during my marriage. A few days after court, she admitted she'd started questioning her own memory around Ethan years ago. That hit me hard. Because manipulation spreads quietly through families. Their father approached me outside the courtroom after the hearing ended. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. I should have recognized this behavior earlier, he said quietly. I appreciated the apology more than he probably realized. Denise avoided eye contact almost entirely. 2 weeks later, she sent a message through Ethan's attorney, wishing me peace and wellness. A graceful way of admitting I'd been right without saying the actual words. As for Ethan, the polished image finally cracked. About 2 weeks after the protection order, he posted another vague online paragraph about men not being believed. This time, the response didn't go the way he expected. Too many people had seen enough by then. The best comment came from his aunt. Maybe write things down next time. Lauren sent me the screenshot while I was at work. I laughed so hard, I startled Penny. Yes, Penny stayed. The rescue mutt with 1 white paw and absolutely no respect for boundaries. She follows me from room to room like emotional support security. Work got better too. Actually, better than better. I got promoted to senior analytics manager last week. During the meeting, my director said something that almost made me emotional. You seem steadier lately. More decisive. That word stayed with me afterward.
Decisive.
Because hesitation had become survival inside my marriage. Double-check conversations, confirm timelines, distrust your instincts, question your memory first before questioning him. Living like that changes your nervous system. Not anymore. Miles and I are still seeing each other. Slowly. Carefully. Peacefully. The first time he came over for dinner, he noticed the blue notebook sitting on the bookshelf. The famous one? He asked. I nodded. Unfortunately. He studied it for a second before smiling softly. Looks like it did its job. It did. Because here's what I finally understand now. Memory isn't just about facts. It's about safety. When somebody constantly rewrites conversations, denies promises, changes timelines, and smooths over your confusion like it's your flaw, they aren't just winning arguments. They're trying to become the only reliable narrator in your life. And once that happens, everything becomes easier for them. Broken promises.
Excuses. Disrespect. Control.
My memory was never broken. I wasn't confused. I was being trained to distrust myself. The blue notebook didn't save my marriage. It ended the performance. And in the process, it gave me back something far more valuable. Confidence in my own reality.